And now, I would like to reconvene the Monterey County Board of Supervisors of September 12th, 2017. And clerk, can you call the roll?
Yes, Madam Chair and board members, let the record show that all board of supervisors are present this afternoon.
Thank you very much. We have 3 scheduled matters today, and I noticed that I've got about 25 speakers scheduled to speak. In addition to that, we have 2 hours of presentation scheduled from the staff. So it's going to be a challenging afternoon, and what I'd like to do is to limit people's comments as we go through to just about 2 minutes per person at the get-go. We'll see how we're going, but my hope is that we're going to be able to get through these 3 very important items, and I hope that you'll bear with me as we try to hear all the very important information on these items. So let's start first with item 15.1. Which is dealing with the homeless shelter, for lack of a better term. And if you wish to speak, please ensure that you fill out a speaker form. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair. Thanks for the opportunity. We're here before you based on the direction from the board of July 18th to come back with a proposed agreement, a lease agreement for providing a temporary year-round shelter at 321 North Main, and then give direction to the Social Services Director to negotiate a contract with the vendor provider. The agreement before you is for 2 years. Work with the community and the City of Salinas and foundations to build a permanent shelter at the 1220 Natividad Road site. The proposed lease is to house up to 50 individuals at this location, consistent with the emergency shelter within the existing zoning that can be sited without a conditional use permit within the City of Salinas. So this agreement includes funding to be spent on improvements to be made so that the location can be used for a shelter. Elliot and I are here to answer questions. We also have staff from RMA, George Salcido and Don Searle, as well as some of Elliot's staff to answer any questions you may have at this point. But that's really all we have to present.
Thank you very much.
Unless Elliot wants to add anything.
Thank you.
More interested in questions.
Okay. All right, so that knocked a little time off. We might have more time for public comment. Very good, okay. So we have a very serious issue before us, and we'll just start with questions then from the board before we go to the public for comment. We'll start at this end.
I have considerable comments on this, but I don't have any questions.
Okay, great. Well, we can start with public comment then. Supervisor Salinas?
Questions?
Okay. Supervisor Rego, questions?
Yeah, well, I just wanted to add that Supervisor Phillips and I embarked on working with a lot of stakeholders, along with Amanda Gonzalez and Elliot Robinson, Department of Social Services. And after the Tamsi temporary shelter closed down at the end of May, the vote was taken by numerous elected officials that wasn't the preferred site. So then, as a result of that, we said that there was still a great need to have a permanent year-round shelter in Salinas. And so we then invited several people to come and help us search for another more suitable site. And so we invited the Chamber of Commerce, the Salinas City Center Association, homeless providers, the City of Salinas, and we looked at every possible site we could find. 20 Soledad, the old Natividad Hospital. We looked at some sites at the old Pepsi facility. And fortunately, we were able to, one of our business leaders, Mr. Cardinale, reached out to the county about a property that he had recently acquired. And we also found a potential site for a permanent shelter at 1220 Natividad. So all along, in a good faith effort, we try to bring stakeholders together, work collaboratively. Despite whatever vote was taken before, we were trying to work towards a solution. And finally, we found a site for temporary shelter, which we're talking about today, and a site for permanent shelter, which we had previously discussed at our last meeting on this topic. So I did want to just point that out for the community, that we have done a lot of work, and we're talking about what is a very fundamental service that we should have, such as a year-round shelter. And time is of the essence today because the winter is right around the corner. There's some construction that needs to be done on this building, and that's going to take at least 2 to 3 months. And as we saw just a few months ago, we had some tremendous storms. It gets really cold in the Monterey Bay area, and certainly we're talking about people's lives being at risk if we don't have something so basic of a service such as a shelter. And so I think I just wanted to put that before we hear comments from the public, is that we have done our part as a county to work collaboratively with the city and trying to find the most feasible, most viable site, and I think that's what's before us today. Thank you, Madam Chair.
And Madam Chair, can I just comment on that just very briefly?
Yes.
One of the issues that we also looked at, and I do want to be clear, is the placement of portables at the 1220 Natividad site. And we explored the cost of that and the impact that it would have on developing the permanent site. And just so the board is aware, the cost of placing portables at 1220 Natividad was estimated at between $1.1 and $1.6 million, as opposed to the $423,000 for the lease and tenant improvements to make the site at 321 North Main work. So we really were looking at a cost-effective site as much as possible to get going. One of the challenges we will have, as Supervisor Arleo mentioned, is the time it takes to do the tenant improvements. Estimates I have right now really take us through the end of November, pushing the construction schedule. So we'll also engage in some conversations about how we continue the interim plan with Dorothy's and Victory Mission to see if we can take that relationship out towards the end of or through the period when tenant improvements at the 321 North Main location exist. But yes, we did do lots of due diligence, looking at numerous sites and alerting people that given the coming winter and inclement weather period, that is important that we do have shelter available for that period. So thank you for those comments, Supervisor Arleo.
Thank you, Mr. Robinson. Ms. Parker?
No questions.
No questions? All right, then what we'll do is take it out to the public for comment. And as I mentioned, if you could please try to keep your comments to 2 minutes apiece. In order, the first person I have is Douglas Dunn, and then Harry Evans, then George Villa.
Good afternoon, my name is Doug Duggar. I live in Salinas, Monterey County. Make it real short. We need this shelter, a temporary year-long shelter. We need a permanent shelter. We have senior citizens, we have veterans, 2,000 veterans estimated out there. We have single with children, single fathers with children, married couples with children. They need a place to stay. This is a health, welfare, and safety issue. And I'm a concerned citizen, I'm a concerned Monterey County resident, and I live in Salinas. And we've been at this for a long time. Me, Wes White, Jill, Allen, there's a lot of people that have been at this for a long time. Mr. Supervisor Willis DeLeo, Jay Parker, Supervisor Salinas, we've been talking about this for a long time. This is a need, and I wish you guys would approve this. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your comments. Harry Evans?
My name is Harry Evans. I stay out there on Lapis Road, and I want to talk about the parking permit program that just started on the 31st of August. Unfortunately, it's a failure. The program came up, people signed documents saying that they would not stay there between 10 a.m. and 6 p.m. There's been only 5 individuals out of approximately 25 to 30 people that have signed up leave every day. Why? There's no enforcement. Absolutely no enforcement. Well, only 5 of us leave every day and come back every night, and there's still 20, 25, 30 RVs out there. They're putting chairs, lawn chairs. Some of the nastiest people in the world, they're back. The police kicked them out on the 31st of August. The environmental protection people came out. The hazardous people came out. These people dug their own sumps out there, were their own johns, and they're back. And they're going, when they left on 31 August, they left 2 tons of trash. Wherever they go, they leave trash, and they're back, because there's no enforcement. No enforcement, no compliance. People sign documents so they could stay out there. They violated that. We request, the good homeless out there request that police enforcement come out and get rid of the bad people. They're not supposed to be there. This has been going on too long now. The grace period where the VA people come out every night at 6 p.m. to sign people up to get those permits. Well, the grace period has to end. Every day, we're getting new people coming in from outside the county. Go to Monterey County, free living for 3 months. Just show me your insurance card. We appreciate the VA people coming out there, spending their time and doing this. The sign-up program needs to stop.
Thank you. Thank you for
Thank you
your
very much,
comments.
ma'am.
Thank you. And then next I have George Villa, and then Israel Villa, and then West White.
Good afternoon, County Board of Supervisors. My name is George Villa. I'm a local resident, I'm also a gym owner, a nonprofit. I'm here to also support having a temporary and a permanent homeless shelter. I know I have a lot of friends that I grew up with that are now homeless because of the lack of programs. And I think it stems from a lot of the funding distribution that has here in town. I think the benefits of having a homeless shelter was that you're not going to have a lot of people that are going to be sick or depressed or trying to find a job. And I know there's a lot of veterans and also a lot of youth and single moms and parents that are homeless and are, not that they're bad people, they're struggling in life and they can't find a job or just having a hard time making it. So I would kindly urge you all to think about what's right for this community and this county, and it's also a step forward towards improving public health. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Mr. Evia?
Good afternoon, Buenas tardes, Board. Israel Villa with MIPA, also a local Salinas resident. I'll keep it brief as well. I'm in full support of this resolution for the homeless shelter. Unfortunately, it's a huge, huge problem. I know here in Salinas, and I'm sure in other neighboring towns. I also know quite a few of my friends who I grew up with who are now out there in Chinatown or get kicked out every few months for whatever reason, and now you just see them all over town. I'm very glad that you guys are taking these steps because it's definitely needed, and I hope that we can do more. I know it's a good start, but there's definitely more. I know there's definitely over 50 homeless people in Chinatown alone, let alone all the other sub-pockets we have now. So again, I really thank you guys from the bottom of my heart for addressing this, and I really commend you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And West White?
Hi, Wes White, Salinas resident, president of Salinas Homeless Union, retired teacher, citizen of the world. I'm really glad that this resolution is up. I hope you do at least 2 years. I hope there's extensions possible as well, because who knows how long government gets mired in the muck. I hope that the new place on 1220 is going to be like a wraparound services for people who are chronically too poor to afford rent. And, you could do that actually at 1220. It'd be really easy to do wraparound services around, people just doing overnight shelter and then all the other services around you. I'd love to see that. 321 North Main, I gave the city a not so good response, I suppose. I was not happy. I just think they're wrong. They're wrong in blocking this from happening, and I'm glad that you're going the route that you're doing to make it happen. I've gotten assurances from the city that they're going to put in a lot of money into something, and I hope they do. If they don't like 321 and they come up with an alternative, then we can have both. I'd love to see more shelters around, and I look forward to a unanimous. I'm pretty sure it's going to be slammed up. You guys put batting 1,000 today. I love it. Keep up the good work. I'm not going to be here for the soccer one, but I'm hoping that's unanimous as well. And keep up the good work. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there any other member of the public that would like to comment on this item?
Good afternoon to the board of trustees. This is a difficult subject for myself. I am formerly incarcerated, and when I paroled, I had a very hard time looking for a place. Fortunately, I had some people who believed in me, and they gave me an opportunity to live with them. It wasn't the best opportunity, but it was an opportunity. And during that time, while I was moving around, I was transient. I had 2 jobs, and I was going to school at Cardinale. And fortunately, throughout that time, I found a stable place, resident, due to my tenacity. However, a lot of people don't have that tenacity. A lot of people are beaten down, are going through depression, drug addiction, and I don't think anybody's better than the other. Everybody has different life experiences. Everybody goes through their own trauma. You know, can't compare a little girl's trauma when her dog dies to somebody who loses a relative. It's still trauma. It still hurts. You can't compare the pain. And that's how I look at this. You know, there's a lot of people out on the street. They're not even here. They can't even represent themselves. They can't even put it together to be able to word how they feel, what's going on with them. They don't have the critical analysis. And so I'm here once again to voice that for them. If I didn't have the opportunity, the willingness to want to get out of my situation, I would still be looking for resources. And so I'm very grateful that this is present today, and I hope that y'all vote yes on it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and thank you for your tenacity.
Thank you.
Any other comments from the public on this item? If not, we'll bring it back to the board for questions, comments. Start with Supervisor Phillips, comments?
I have some prepared comments because I have a serious concern about this lease. We started off with this. It was going to be the city's homeless problem. That also involves the county. And so we're supposed to be working together, the city and the county working together to resolve this. I can't support a lease mainly because we don't have the money in the budget, but it's wrong for other reasons. And I do that with some trepidation because I'm the one that found, that Joe Cardinale called and said he found the building and he was interested in a building helping the homeless. And very few property owners are willing to lease to something for the homeless. And so obviously I have some concerns, but going into it, when Supervisor Naleo and I and you folks were here, we started working on this, and it was agreed it would be the city and county working together. And we agreed that the 1225 Natividad was a better long-range solution, and we looked for a longer-range solution for that. It was agreed that the city would help expedite through the permit process so that we could have the least cost of tenant improvements. And frankly, they've done exactly the opposite. They've thrown up every hurdle that we can think about. And we went from tenant improvements of approximately 45 or 50,000 now to 235,000 with additions. So with these costs of tenant improvements chunked into a 2-year lease, it just makes no sense. We might as well convert it to a long-term facility versus a short-term facility if we're going to spend this kind of money and eat up those tenant improvements in just 2 years. And frankly, I think the city will continue to fight us at every step of the way on that. So the timing of whether we're going to get it done in time with those hurdles that were going to occur, it may not be practical for a short-range solution anyway. And I guess my bigger concern is that we dump all this money into this short-term facility when we don't own the property and we don't have any money left that we could appropriate for the long-range facility. And as we know, our money is scarce. This is one of our toughest budget years. We're looking at AB 85, indigent medical care. We're looking at about a $6 million hit that we haven't even addressed how we're going to deal with that. And I think it's wrong for the county to be required or to be mandated by the city to solve their homeless problem. That admittedly, it's a city-county, the ones require a city-county solution for it, but I think it's a bad precedent because we're going to go on the peninsula and look what we're going to do, and they're going to say, well, the county stepped up and spent all the money for homeless shelter in Salinas. Why shouldn't we do the same? Why shouldn't we put any money into our homeless problem? So the city is committed that they will support the 1225 and will work on that. They're committed that they will do something about finding beds at Victory Mission to accommodate for the beds that were being used for the overnight shelter. They'll find beds at Victory Mission, Northeast Place, and they'll find some other ones. And frankly, I was the only one on the board that supported the city when they were fighting to have the Tansy building continue. And it put us in a precarious position when at least I thought, because we made a commitment to the business community that's out there, but they're not helping us find any other solution. So I think the city, they're committed. They say, at least my conversations with the mayor as recently as 2 days ago, that they're committed to put money into 1225. They're committed to finding help pay for an interim solution, and I think we move directly to doing something at 1225. Now, I want to talk for a minute about the 1225 building there at Natividad. We've looked at that. The building is structurally sound. It was built about the time some of the buildings, other public buildings that I'm familiar with. It's gutted out, so you don't have a lot of asbestos to deal with. It's worth adding on to, and its location has some advantages because it's near services for the hospital, for the sheriff's department, for the health department. It has a big fenced-in back area that provides some privacy from neighbors and the other ones. And any cost that we put into it goes into the building, not to a short-term lease where we don't get anything back. I had an architect look at it, an experienced architect who's done a lot of work for the county and other ones. He thought it would be between $600,000 and $700,000 to do that. That's not the county doing it, that's him doing it as a private citizen. I had a general contractor who's done some big jobs, who brought in subs, and he says it's between $600,000 and $900,000 to do it, doing it right. And if you fast tracked it, if you found a way to fast track it, you can do it in 6 months, 7 months. But that's getting into the hands of a businessman, a developer, and saying, do it. And I think we ought to explore the real possibility that we've talked about before, but everybody keeps dodging it, of taking that land and getting the commitment. I think we ought to at least continue this money to this matter to get the commitment of the city that they will support it, put money into the facility. But I think it's worth exploring the idea of conveying that property to a nonprofit and have the nonprofit go in and modify the building and provide management of that building. And I think you will get more support from the nonprofit community. And it's somewhat similar to the next item we're going to talk about, the soccer fields. You got the city and the county working together and are contracting with a nonprofit to come in and run and manage the facility. And it's similar to what we did at Rancho Cielo when they said, well, the county can't afford to do this. Give it to a nonprofit to take and run it and manage. So as we look at it now, you look at, it's gonna be costing us, trying to figure out the cost, $1,140,778,000 for a year. And if we get a maximum, some days we didn't have a maximum of 50 people, but if you figure you got a maximum of 50 people, we're gonna be paying rent at the rate of $22,850 the way I can't figure it out. I'm not great at math. But there's somewhere per person, assuming we have 50 people. I just don't think we're in a position to expand. I don't think we have the money, so I'm opposed.
Thank you, Supervisor Phillips. Supervisor Salinas?
Well, Madam Chair, and I guess the ad hoc folks that were looking at Supervisor Lejo and our different nods. Supervisor Lejo, you heard what Supervisor Phillips has indicated, I mean, but to the staff also, so if we don't go with this emergency shelter on North Main Street, what happens to those 50 individuals, persons that we were under, I thought, under time is of the essence to find a facility before winter hits? So what would happen if we delay this? And I'm frankly, I'm concerned and disappointed with the city, because I thought we were working together on it. I thought initially, I don't know what got to them, what political pressure they were under to change their mind. Because we were clear, we're going to use this facility for 2 years. This will give us 2 years to quickly galvanize, get the community foundation, get everybody to give us the resources to do the capital projects at 1221. That was my understanding. Other than that, I don't know. The city had the women's club that they don't use anymore. So I'm just disappointed they're not even here so that I could hear from them and ask them, what is your alternative then? If you don't want the North Main Street, where do you want us to send this individual? And so at this point, I'm kind of hesitant to say no, because we still need to deal with this. This isn't going away. I haven't heard from them, because we pick another site for an emergency shelter, then they feel some pressure, they're going to change their mind, because it's always the same, not here. Everybody wants us to do something about it, but not in my backyard. And so that would be my question, and I don't know, Supervisor Lejo, do you still think that we can continue with this, and you'll certainly continue talking to the city about this? But I have a major concern that, again, we're down here to the last minute, the sister place where we had them. The city was adamant, we don't want them here. And so I don't know what went on, what transpired, but this is frankly disappointing that we're dealing with very critical issues, and we've got to make decisions now, not tomorrow or 2 weeks from now.
Mr. Robinson?
To the chair, if I can respond, I mean, what the city, presents in their letter to the board is pursuing rapid rehousing programs, housing navigation, and street outreach. And currently, the county, we have a $1 million project annually with Housing Resource Center to provide rapid rehousing. And just to give it context, through that contract, we are able to place about 8 families, it's only for families. We're able to place about 8 families a month in housing. It typically leads to permanent housing, particularly when we can access the housing authority's vouchers and continue services. But the big challenge is finding housing, which I know in past times when I've been up here talking about the homeless issue, that is one of the biggest challenges, finding housing. So we have that contract in place, but to expand it, and even now when we get grants, we have grant opportunities, we have to think twice, are we able to find the housing? Because we don't want to get a grant and then not be able to use it. So that's the biggest challenge. So when you ask what happens, the city is proposing rapid rehousing, which is a best practice. But when inclement weather comes, having a safe place for families, a place that is open to families and single individuals, where it doesn't have to be triaged, is something that the Coalition of Homeless Services Providers, as they're managing the CARS system, says is extraordinarily valuable, because you don't have homeless people with limited transportation moving around. So I guess in essence, when you say, well, what happens without this? We don't have that expanded emergency shelter process during inclement weather. With the exception of Victory Mission, we have an interim solution there. Dorothy's is open to discussion, but does not have a commitment to continue the expansion of homeless services for women. So there are challenges, and Victory Mission really is designed for single men. It's an extraordinarily valuable resource for single men, many of whom have challenges finding other placements because of their history. So that's there, but in the winter months, when you look at the scale of the homeless population, there are some, you need that extra resource, and that's what we're trying to address. So I'm not sure what the alternative is that the city's proposing.
Supervisor Lejo?
Thank you. First of all, I wanted to just express that we had worked diligently in trying to reach out and make this a true partnership with citizens, like I stated earlier. Beyond just inviting the city, I personally reached out to Mayor Gunter, Tony Barrera, Scott Davis, Gloria Rosa, Henry Craig. Many of those came to join us on several of the visits to look at different sites. I think they expressed some support in their letter regarding our permanent site, and they attended in our last meeting. And I think we tried to convey that we were committed that this site at 321 Main would be truly a temporary site, and that our real long-term permanent site would be at 1220 Natividad for all the reasons stated then and stated today. It's near the hospital, it's next to our health department, and really has the capacity to be built out and I think serve as an ideal shelter with wraparound services. But unfortunately, they pulled away. They pulled away their support, and I think we're at a point that we should move forward. We should still stay firm, recognizing that this is a major need in our community, and that if they're going to pull away support, we should be able to move forward with this temporary project for our homeless residents. I did want to point out, though, because this letter was sent to us, but when it was agendized, it was improperly placed on the agenda. To give the community notice that they were going to be taking a vote on a position on shelter. County, none of us were invited to come address any concerns about the shelter. And I think all along we've tried to demonstrate an ability to work together. We've been very gracious in our comments towards the city. Just unfortunately, we weren't, our county and our staff were not afforded the same courtesy at the last meeting where this was discussed. But despite that, I think it's important for us to still express to the city that we're still willing to work together on the permanent side, that hopefully, if not today, that months down the road, they could join in with this on this temporary site. And we are, in their letter, they expressed some concerns with the site, that it's only limited to 50, or the expense. But I did want to tell the public, these conditions that are being placed, some of the conditions are conditions that were placed on the Tamsi site, and that's why the expense is greater. Because of their opposition, we're pursuing a Type A permit from the city, because that's non-discretionary. Under state law and under the ordinance, it is by right. If we pursue a Type D, which we hope to do in the future, Type A, we want to get this up and running so we could at least serve those 50 people. And we know the need is there because our last shelter maxed out almost every night at 70 people. But the Type D would allow us to be able to use that facility and serve more people. And then there was, it was mentioned in the letter that the services aren't there because, that's because we can only have services there and use throughout the day under a Type B license. And so it's the same barriers that are causing us to be able to limit what we want to do, the possibility of doing that. Otherwise, it could be much more effective with more services and serve more people. So I just wanted to lay that out on the record, but I did want to express that. The other part was the pointing to rapid rehousing. Yes, that's those of us and some of the city staff and the county. Some of us went up to the navigation in San Francisco for navigation services, and it was very clear there that those models work with rapid rehousing when the counties have invested in the county. So we went to San Francisco. In San Francisco, the key component was trying to get people housed within 90 days. But the other part of that is that San Francisco County, over the years, many years back, has actually invested in about 6,000 to 7,000 units, so that when they do have people in the navigation center, they could then move them into. So there's purchases of buildings, apartments, subsidized housing. That's a long-term, that's a very expensive proposal. We're talking about property and buildings. So that doesn't happen overnight. We also we went to visit the Pavarello House in Fresno County. And one of the things they have there, they have programs also for subsidized housing like Section 8. They have a program so that they work with landlords so that landlords don't get burned and don't want to stop renting to folks on the Section 8 vouchers. That's long-term, and we need to develop that kind of a program and relationship with local landlords so that we don't have as much barriers to putting people into housing. But then back to the shelter, we're talking about the safety net, the most fundamental service. So meanwhile, they're waiting to get on a list into some housing. Meanwhile, they're connecting with social services and mental health services. Meanwhile, we're trying to find a better housing situation for them. We at least need the safety net so that instead of living out on the street or in their cars, as we've seen a growing number of children, we have a place where they could stay. And I think the last shelter showed us that if there, people will utilize it. There wasn't any major problems coming out of the shelter, unlike it's being stated. There was no major incidents coming out of that shelter, but it was certainly utilized. And I think we should, I think the community for a long time has seen the problem get worse, and the letter mentions the issue of homelessness is getting worse. Yes, because the housing crisis, the homelessness crisis, is not only got worse in Monterey County, it's got worse in every county in California on a statewide basis. And that's why our governor and our legislature has now made it the top priority this week, the last week of the legislative session, to try to find solutions because the problem has got worse everywhere across the state of California. So it's not a unique thing. And when people mention that what we're doing here has failed because the number, with the simple reasoning that the numbers have got worse, I think that's very simplistic. It doesn't address the complexity of the crisis that we're facing. But by moving forward on the shelter today, I think what we're trying to convey to our community that status quo is unacceptable, that they don't want to just see continued growing number of people on the street, but that the county is moving one step at a time, achieving one benchmark at a time. And I think at the minimum, the first step that we should be agreeing on is that we move forward with having a permanent year-round shelter as other Monterey-based cities and counties have had for many years already. And then once we achieve that, work towards the permanent shelter, and then work towards rapid rehousing and the other breadth of services that I think will have us have an effective plan to better address the homelessness crisis here in Monterey County. So I hope that my colleagues would join us today to take the courage, put the resources, so that we could realize this important fundamental service that we should have had in Monterey County a long time ago.
Thank you, Supervisor Lejo. Supervisor Parker.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I appreciate all the comments so far, and I want to thank staff and community members and board members who've been really working on this. And as I well know, the staff at the Department of Social Services and others have been working very hard and creatively on many fronts of the homelessness issue. So this is, just one. I do appreciate Supervisor Phillips's comments and concerns. I too really prefer the idea of investing in our own property, in our own building, but the fact is that what the staff has come up with is a more reasonable cost and a more reasonable timeline for what we're trying to do, at least reasonable cost for the improvements. I imagine running the thing will, the cost would be more or less equivalent. So I think this is the right option for today. As it relates to rapid rehousing and permanent housing, safe parking for vehicles, we need everything in this county. We need to meet people where they are and then get them the supports that they're ready for, and the fact is that moving them into housing is the most challenging thing in our county because we don't have enough units. And that's why I'm hopeful that when we are looking at our 1220 dividend, that we look at not just a shelter, but some possibility for some more permanent housing, longer term transitions or whatever, because it's not a problem that's going to disappear unless we start working on it. I do feel some concern and disappointment that we're not in partnership with the city of Salinas on this, and I certainly hope that they will find a way to chip in, because it's not any one entity's problem. It's our situation as a community, and we all need to participate together in a thoughtful, compassionate set of responses. I do just want to say that in the actions that we're being asked to take today, there is mention of allocating money that is coming from cannabis tax. I am very, I think it's a modest amount, and this is part of the one-time costs, so I'm willing to go along with it today, but I just know from talking that everyone has spent the cannabis revenue several times over already in their minds, and I think that before we start allocating this money, we need to have a conversation about what our priorities are and how we're going to really look at this important and rare new revenue stream. So thank you for letting me make those comments.
Thank you, Supervisor Parker. I just am so unsettled about this, I can't even tell you. I'm really saddened that the city isn't here. It's just absolutely obvious in their absence that this is not what they are supporting. And what I'm worried about, just keep blathering all my thoughts out here, I'm worried that if we do go to Main Street, that the next step is going to be that they're going to be resistant and making it very difficult for us to get the permits that we're going to need to have to be able to move forward. And the thing that bothers me more than anything else about this is that we're sitting here struggling with this, and I am fearful that we are putting on the backs of the homeless people, and that's not right. We've got to be able to find a solution to this. We simply have to. Elliot, I've worked with you forever. I know we're number one, that you're a magic man. We come up with solutions that have been amazing to me, working together in lots of senses. And I know how hard you have worked on this. I don't want to discount that, but I just don't feel like this is the right solution. I feel so troubled by this. I'm conscious of the fact that we've got 50 people, 50 families that are going to need housing very, very, very soon. I'm just so fearful that the city of Salinas is not going to allow us to move forward at the location. I don't know what we can do to jumpstart Natividad. I think that is going to be the right spot for us from everything that I've seen and everything that I've heard about it, plus it's ours. We're investing in our property, which I really like a lot better. I'm not supportive of putting cannabis money into this project. I feel like it just irritates me more than anything else. As we sit here still struggling with our own cannabis ordinance, the city of Salinas is sending out permits, night and day. Talk about the places that the cannabis money ought to be flowing into. They should use cannabis money to put into this project. Okay, who else shall I annoy?
Madam Chairman,
Yes.
could I make a suggestion? I know Mayor Gunner is up in Sacramento testifying today, or was supposed to, on concern about the energy prices up there. I don't know whether the rest of the board members would agree to continue this a week so that we could sit down with the city of Salinas. I mean, I know Dr. Baumann is concerned about where the money is coming from, and he said the same thing I did only, but to the city, if not here, where in the city do we put this? In some ways, I would assume, while we're working on a permanent shelter, is to go back and change my vote and go back and see if we could get the Tansy building back, rather than investing this kind of money in this. And I'm afraid, once we get started on a temporary shelter, and that's the big concern of the city, once we get started on a temporary shelter, well, it's here, we've invested this kind of money into it, and they're concerned we're going to be there 4 or 5 or 6 years, and I'm worried about it interfering with the permanent shelter that we agree with. So at least I throw that as a thought to put it back where we can sit down, and I'd be glad with Supervisor Aleo to sit down with some representatives of the cities to see how we could take one last ditch effort to get them behind us on approaching it in a reasonable manner.
Yeah, and
Yes.
but before today's meeting, I think we had reached out to the city manager, to the mayor, and the council took a full vote, unanimous vote against this shelter. We're already under a very short timeline if we're going to have location to to open for our homeless residents come November. If we don't do this, it's going to delay it even more. Had we not had those conversations with Mayor Gunter before, I would say let's give it a shot, but those conversations have happened and the position hasn't changed. So I'd be hesitant to want to delay a week. What we're talking about now is a type A homeless shelter, which is by right, non-discretionary. The permit has to be issued. And that's why we're moving forward with this type of a shelter at this time. So I would instead, and I'm still open to having the conversations, and I will keep trying to work with the city staff and the council. But I think today merits a vote to move forward if we're going to be able to get the shelter open. We're aiming at early November. Now we're talking about the end of November. I'd like to hear the thoughts of Mr. Robinson or Assistant CEO Gonzalez, but I would move to approve staff's recommendation today.
Just in response, one of the thoughts I do have, because I think that the precedent issue that Supervisor Phillips raised is a complex issue. I mean, revenue, no matter which direction we move, be it the permanent shelter or the appropriation with revenue behind it, be it the permanent shelter or the temporary shelter, the increment is $400,000. The operational costs will be pretty similar either way, but one of the opportunities I think we have is to continue to work with the city on building the shelter from that type A limited service 50 per night to something larger, because one of the things that the city does express, and I think that is a very shared concern between both the city and the county, is that we have more services built into the shelter program for housing navigation, for case management, for helping people access resources rather than just an overnight place to stay. Now, we will have some of those services built in, but not as extensive as an ideal type B shelter that has, more robust day programming, more robust resources that can come with a larger population who's accessing the shelter. So one of the opportunities that I think we would have moving forward is to work with the city around the expansion of the shelter and perhaps see where we can get some financial commitment there, because, again, I think the precedent that Supervisor Phillips raised is very complex as we look at a multi-jurisdictional issue where truly every jurisdiction has to step up to the plate, whether the homeless are located in their jurisdiction or whether they're not located in their jurisdiction. It really is a shared problem when you look at the increasing cost of housing and the challenge that so many people, young families, older people have with paying for rent.
Do you think that a week would give us any fresh opportunities? Think the Tampsey building is a possibility?
I doubt it's a possibility. I don't know what we could accomplish in a week in all candor. Certainly, our commitment will be to do everything we can, but it's unclear what we could accomplish in a week. Because the challenge gets to be location. And what I have heard officials from the city say is, bring portables out to 1220 Natividad. And the challenges for portables at 1220 Natividad run from the cost, which is a greater cost, to the challenge of developing around portables. I think we've all seen portables go up and stay there for a long time. And when you think about programming in portables, if you think about the neighborhood concerns that come up, my personal recommendation is that there'd be pretty big challenges if we went down that path. And that is the path that we've heard from the city. I don't know if they have any other locations. We've heard talk of it, but we haven't heard any actual locations come forward.
Yes.
Just on the point of what other alternatives are there, the only other thing I've heard very briefly was doing what we're already doing now after they closed the temporary shelter at Tampsey, which is the expanded services at Dorothy's Place and Victory Mission. But for obvious reasons, we all know that when you speak to members who are homeless, members of the community who are homeless, there's issues with that, right? Because there's sometimes many do not go there regardless because they feel it's unsafe. There's issues with registered sex offenders, 209s, and so issues of children being in Chinatown become a real issue. But I recently heard that there was some interest in expanding services where children can be in Chinatown, where for all my conversations with providers and community residents, that's a real safety concern for children being there because of the safety issues and because of the registered sex offenders who utilize some of those services in Chinatown. So these issues are very complex, and that's why we were trying to find a site outside of Chinatown that homeless residents could feel safer around, and that I think the last shelter demonstrated that it worked well just with having a very vigilant nonprofit provider running our shelter.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
I just would like clarification because it was my impression from what Supervisor Olenko said about the kind of permit that we're pursuing that, because I want to respond to your concern that I would also share if there was some chance that the city of Salinas could somehow keep us from being able to work with this private property owner. And my impression was that the type of permit that we're pursuing doesn't allow them to interfere with what we're doing and block what we're doing. Because if we do vote to go forward today, I don't want any rude surprises later. I mean, if we're going to have the rude surprises, we might as well know them today. So I wanted to get clarification about that issue that you raised. Yeah, maybe.
Is there anyone that can answer that question who's in the room today?
Charles, do you want to answer or do you want to answer?
Apologize, I have to hear the question again.
So the question is, the impression that I had from what Supervisor Orlando said was that we're pursuing a type of permit within the city to make the changes with the property owner that is a non-discretionary permit, so that and he's referred to that this is the kind of shelter that can be done by right, so that it really isn't possible for the city to say, in any official sense, and stop us from being able to do this with that property owner who's interested in having this shelter on their site. Wanted to make sure Chair Adams raised the concern that there might be other things, or that the city could stop us, and so this is already complicated enough without having the specter of some action down the road as it relates to the permit and getting the property up to speed for a shelter.
So there are many, under the city's ordinances, which generally comply with state law, allowing for construction or conversion for such shelters. There are areas where you can have shelters as of right, as long as you comply with the restrictions that they have in their ordinance, and I can't remember them all, maybe Elliot might remember some of them, that are generally consistent with state law and what they can put in place for restrictions. And if you meet all those, then you can do it by right, there's no discretionary permit that is required. If you don't meet those, then they can, reject it or say that you need a discretionary permit. My understanding is that the 321 site is within one of those type A areas that allows these kinds of shelters as of right, as long as you meet the criteria that they set forth in their city ordinance.
So the criteria in the city ordinance is that the shelter shall contain a maximum of 50 beds and shall serve no more than 50 persons nightly. There's a maximum stay. The length of stay per individual shall not exceed 180 days within a 365-day period. Management shall be provided on site during all hours of operations with emergency contact information posted. There is an enclosed intake and waiting area, providing a minimum of 4 square feet on site, covered waiting and resident intake space per authorized bed. Queuing within the public right-of-way is not permitted, so queuing has to be off, or lines for entry have to be off the public right-of-way. Can't be proximal to other county other emergency shelters, so at least 300 feet away from other emergency shelters. There's a parking requirements and a non-pollutant discharge elimination system requirement.
Do we know if the property meets all of those criteria?
Yes, what we understand, well, yes, is our part of it. if I say, if the city, I hate to speculate, maybe I shouldn't, but, there are building permit issues, because we are doing the tenant improvement, so you have to make sure the building permit issues are resolved, and you'll have to make sure that, that's part of our lease as well.
Supervisor Phillips, the budget capital.
Just ask Warren Whalen out there about dealing with the building department of Salinas when he was at Bravo Stadium. They had the mayor out there every other day. So I'm just telling you, we're better off trying to figure out a way to work with them than if you're pushing for a date in November. And they're really locked into this. Apparently they had a 7-0 vote, and I had the same concerns when I saw the videos. They didn't act very cordial to us. We got to look about long-term relations with the city too. But I'm really afraid that you're ever going to get it done in time for the winter season.
Well, we have a motion on the floor. Dr. Bellman, and let it when you screen it.
So this is certainly a very difficult situation, and I understand the mayor and some council members are up at the League of Cities that starts tomorrow and will go through Friday. So
All American
cities
cities
would be to, of course, approve it today. Alternatively, you can direct staff to put it on consent for next week with an attempt to have a conference call with the mayor, and I could work with Ray Corpus to arrange that. And alternatively, some off-the-cuff ideas were abandoning the public defender trailers right across the street, and we could expedite that move and consider using that facility there. And then I believe, Elliot, the cost of this is about $1.5 million per year. Is that correct?
When you bring, hang on, let me find the board report there, but when you add the services and or the operations and the lease, it comes up to between 1.1 million and 1.1 million and 350,000 kind of in 2018.
So
But the bulk of that cost is the operational cost for any shelter.
for the service. So about $60 per resident per day, so that's a significant cost for that operation. So that another alternative would be to work with Dorothy's and also get winter vouchers for females and families. So there's a number of options for you.
Madam Chair, I'd be supportive of put it in contingency, but on consent is you indicated, because it'll give us a week, and that's a good idea, because that's been brought up before in terms of the portable setting, public phone, we own it, and that certainly good, but at least we'll give them a week to think about it. Certainly nobody wants to have a deteriorating relationship with the city. It's important, we got to get back and work with them and talk to them, so I'd be willing to say, put it on consent next week, and then they'll have this week out of courtesy, because maybe they are out there, and see what they can come up with, or what they're willing to support or not. That's the goal. We've made a decision. I think they'll understand that there's strong support for it on North Main Street site.
So,
With that, then, Madam Chair, then I'll withdraw my motion, and we'll move that we agree to put this on next week's consent agenda, and in the meantime, we will do last effort to reach out to the city of Salinas, Mary Gunter, and Ray Corpus, and as part of a good faith effort to try to reach an agreement and trying to solve it. I think it's a good time to put other alternatives, such as the public defender's office, which is the old public defender's office, portable buildings. That's another possible site, and probably less expensive, but it has its concerns, I'm sure, by the community as well. But I think when you put other options out there, perhaps it might spur people to think that maybe what we're talking about is perhaps the better side of the two. But I think it's good to put that out there at this moment in time, because I think it is an option we can seriously consider.
I'll second that.
so, very good. So we have the motion on the floor to essentially put it on consent for next week, giving us a week to see what we can come up with. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Dr. Bellman.
Bueno, entonces Alejo, ¿qué vamos a hablar acerca de qué se va a aprobar hoy en cuanto a los desamparados?
Bueno, hoy la mesa de los supervisores aquí del condado de Monterrey van a considerar en aprobar un refugio que ojalá puede existir por todo el año para nuestras personas sin hogares, personas desamparadas. Sabemos que la crisis de homeless ha empeorado no solamente en nuestro condado, pero por todo el estado de California. Pero sabemos que hasta ahorita no hay un servicio básico de tener un refugio para nuestras personas desamparados en toda nuestra historia. Y esto es un servicio básico que debemos tener. Cada persona tiene derecho a tener un lugar seguro donde dormir en la noche. Y sabemos que el año pasado había docenas de niños, mujeres, ancianos, que sus vidas estaban en peligro por estar afuera en el frío o en clima muy mal. Por eso que ojalá que hoy podemos seguir adelante en aprobar ese refugio que estamos viendo aquí en la 321 calle Main, aquí en Salinas. Y para mí sería un orgullo de tener ese tipo de servicio para las personas más pobres en nuestra comunidad.
321 calle Main, refugio.
Ya.
¿Cuándo se abriría, señor? ¿Un refugio que...
Sabemos que ya viene el invierno y queremos que esto se pueda abrir para el mes de noviembre, pero hay mucho trabajo que hacer sobre construcción y por eso ojalá queremos tomar un voto y que esto se mueva adelante, pero los contratos se necesitan arreglar muy pronto si vamos a poder abrir esto llegando el mes de noviembre.
¿Daría cabida para cuántas personas? ¿Les darían comida?
Queremos comenzar porque este proyecto es más difícil de lo que debe ser por la razón que ahorita la ciudad de Salinas, ellos dan permisos sobre estos tipos de edificios y hasta ahorita no nos han dado mucho apoyo. Pero por eso estamos comenzando con lo que se dice permiso A, que permite solamente 50 personas. Queremos abrir esto, que esto puede beneficiar a lo máximo 50 personas, pero el próximo paso es de sacar el permiso B, que va a dejar más personas, quizá más de 100 personas que se pueden quedar en este refugio por todo el año.
Si no pasa esto.
Sí, bueno, yo creo que hoy ojalá que hay el apoyo. Hemos hecho mucho trabajo desde que cerró el refugio acá en la calle Market en los últimos de mayo y hemos buscado otros sitios. Hemos invitado a la ciudad de Salinas otros líderes de la comunidad que nos ayuden a buscar sitios apropiados y hemos buscado estos dos lugares, en la calle Natividad y en la calle Main, y queremos que estos proyectos sigan adelante porque es tan necesario para nuestras personas que no tienen ningún otro lugar donde dormir.
Okay, go. Oh, okay. So big vote at 1:30. Let's talk about the temporary homeless shelter options and the city's response, the city's letter.
Yeah. Well, the County of Monterey has done a lot of work with, since the end of May when the shelter on Market Street, the Tamsi building, closed. The county has moved to try to enter into temporary agreement with Dorothy's Place and Victory Mission to have a place for our homeless residents to go. But we were really working on it. We've invited our local business associations, the city of Salinas, other community leaders and nonprofit providers to help us search for an appropriate place where we could have our first year-round shelter in Salinas for our homeless residents. We're talking about the most basic services that local government should provide to our most vulnerable. And this is truly the safety net. When people have nowhere else to go, and they're left to sleep out in the street or in a car, we have a responsibility, and I would say it's a human right to make sure that we provide at least a place so people could be out of the bad weather, out of the cold, because otherwise we're putting the lives of children, our seniors, our veterans, our women in danger. So today I hope that I could have the support of my colleagues to support this temporary shelter that we're taking a two-pronged approach, a temporary shelter at 321 Main that could serve our homeless residents, while we are also working on a permanent site at 1220 Natividad Road. That construction work will take longer, it's more expensive, but we are moving on parallel paths to have a temporary plan while we also move on a permanent one.
Now, the city of Salinas didn't want to support the temporary shelter because they felt it was a Band-Aid option, and in a letter to the Board of Supervisors, they had suggested like separate spots throughout the area. Is that something you guys would entertain?
Well, I think they were mentioning wanting to focus on rapid rehousing, and they also mentioned that homelessness has got worse. But the truth is, homelessness, the crisis that we're facing now, has got worse, not only in Monterey County, but almost every county and on a statewide basis across the state of California. That is why this week, the governor and the legislature are looking at bills to try to address the homelessness and housing crisis. But I think we are in agreement that we need more long-term programs such as rapid rehousing here in Monterey County. The problem is you need to start with the fundamentals. If you don't even have a shelter for people to be able to have a safe place to sleep at night, and then you could utilize that shelter to then move people into housing and services, then the other option is that they're living out in the street and their lives are in danger under bad weather, under the cold. And we saw last year that we had a record amount of children and women, families staying at the shelter. It was maxed out every night. Rapid rehousing, which is talked about, is a long-term plan because you need to invest in buying properties and being able to have the units that you could use as transitional and permanent housing, but that takes millions of dollars. It's a long-term plan. Counties like San Francisco have 7,000 units, but they've invested in buildings for subsidized housing over many years. We're not close to that. That should be part of our plan, but in the meantime, I would say we have to agree at the very minimum to have a fundamental service to our homeless residents like a year-round shelter that we've never had here in Salinas.
And so even without the city's help, would you guys even be able to put on a temporary shelter at 321 just to even get the ball rolling?
Yeah, well, our vote today is to do just that. The city of Salinas has already expressed their lack of support, so our decision today is whether we move forward, and I'm hoping that we will do that we'll have the courage to. We've done a lot of work already over the last several months. We found the best sites that were possible. We looked at every possible site. These are the 2 best sites, and I hope that my colleagues will have the courage to move forward and get this shelter up and running, hopefully by November, because the winter's right around the corner, and it does get very cold, and we've had some really bad storms as we saw earlier this year, and we need to be prepared for the very worst. Like we had almost 24 children staying at the shelter these last few months, so we know that need is certainly out there for people of all ages, and so I hope that my colleagues will be very supportive of this today.
All right, thank you.